My name is Ramses de Leon, and I'm going to be your host for this session. We have with us Dr. Karel James Bouse, who will talk about Neo-Shamanism as an alternative contemporary worldview and spiritual practice, presenting a descriptive study involving questionnaires, interviews, and recordings of narrations made by 6 Neo-Shamanic practitioners while in the journey state. Dr. Bouse has a PhD in both psychology and history, and is the founder and director of the Institute of Esoteric Psychology. She has also edited a special issue on anomalous lifeworlds for the Journal of Humanistic Psychology and has been an educator and neo-shamanic practitioner for 25 years. She's also the author of 2 books titled Neo-Shamanism and Mental Health and Transgenerational Colonialism, Wounding, Overcoming, and the Reconstruction of Collective and Personal Identity, published in 2019 and 2021, respectively. So, without further ado, let's begin our video.
Hi, everybody. I'm Dr. Karel Bouse. And first of all, I want to welcome you all to this presentation. I'm delighted that you're here. So thank you very much for coming, because I happen to think that Neo-Shamanism is a very significant alternative contemporary worldview and spiritual practice. I've come to that conclusion after 30 years of studying and practice myself, and also spending the main part of my graduate school and dissertation research on Neo-Shamanism. I was fortunate enough to work with Dr. Stanley Krippner as my mentor and a member of my committee, and I can't thank him enough. The big thing with this presentation has been, after you've written a book that's been published on Neo-Shamanism and doing all of this study, and then you're asked to condense this into a 15 or 20 minute presentation. And that's where it gets a little bit hard, but I have learned a lot in doing this. Let's put it this way. This is going to basically be a skim across the ice. But on the other hand, we do have a Q&A coming up right after this presentation, and I am really looking forward to hearing your feedback, answering your questions, and discussing anything with you, because I think this presentation will probably leave you with just a slim idea, but a lot more questions. Now, what are we going to cover in this presentation? We're going to talk about what Neo-Shamanism is. We're going to look briefly at the differences between traditional shamanism and neo-shamanism. We're going to look at the core concept of neo-shamanic practitioners. I'm going to briefly touch on a 2017 study I did with neo-shamanic practitioners, which is kind of a template for how we can go into further study in this. Also, we will look at the benefits of neo-shamanic practice, and then there will just be some conclusions. So that said, off we go. The first question is, what exactly is neo-shamanism? Neo-shamanism is a old system. Not neo-shamanism, but shamanism is a very old system. It has been around in ancient traditions. It's still in traditional societies in Africa, Australia, Native American, all throughout the world, Siberia, Lapland. Wherever there are tribal, earth-centered societies, you do have a shamanic tradition. And it is something that has been very old, very efficacious, very powerful, and is probably, arguably, the proto-religion. When neo-shamanic techniques are used and adopted by contemporary Western people who have no cultural or societal matrix for using them or understanding them, that is when the term neo-shamanism comes into play. And that is not anything derogatory. It is simply that this is a very old tradition that has resonated with a wide number of people on various levels, some of whom have gone on to become neo-shamanic practitioners. The term neo-shaman only means that they are basically Western, part of the whole Western cultural matrix and history, and that they don't have the advantages of operating in a cultural context that supports their beliefs and their abilities. The main thing about shamanism, the core technology, is the shamanic journey. And first off, I would like to very much thank Dr. Michael Harner, the late Dr. Michael Harner, who founded the Foundation for Shamanic Studies, who was an anthropologist, and he did tremendous work bringing shamanism into Western consciousness, kind of revived our memories about it. He was very good at workshops. The foundation still exists, still teaches what they call core shamanism. And the core of core shamanism is the shamanic journey. What is a journey? What is it like? The journey is when the practitioner willingly and with purpose goes into an altered state of consciousness, usually using drumming, that enables them to act interdimensionally, to go beyond the material world, to interface with entities and phenomena that are not normally perceivable by us when we are in the normal waking state. When the drumming occurs, it begins to help lengthen the brain waves and also to slow them down, so that when you're in a shamanic journey, you're probably in maybe phase 1, phase 2 sleep. The cerebral cortex is active, and so is the limbic system, which gives it a very interesting balance of the irrational and the rational, because you can be in a journey state and actually narrate the journey while you're taking it. And you do retain rational agency while you're in the journey state. Training. In most indigenous cultures, there's a shaman or group of shamans that train people who have been called to this, who have shown talent or passed tests. We don't have this in the West. So although some people go to study with indigenous shamans, many of them just have to go to places like the Foundation of Shamanic Studies or study with other experienced practitioners who have done this for a long time and are themselves practice neo-shamans and very ethical teachers. It's always a state of caveat emptor when you're looking for someone to teach you how to use shamanic techniques. So in the contemporary West, a neo-shamanic practitioner is really kind of a fish out of water because of the difference in worldview and beliefs. The only exceptions that I would say that might be viable are the practices of neo-paganism and Wicca, which are, again, they tend to incorporate the idea that there are multiple dimensions. They have a panentheistic view. They have frequently an animistic view, and there is a belief in magic that you don't find in normal society. So it doesn't, it's not much of a stretch to understand why many neo-shamanic practitioners are followers of either Wicca or neo-paganism, and why those people are also the main pool for aspiring neo-shamans. So what are the differences between the traditional shaman and the neo-shaman? And again, it really goes back into society. When we're here in the West, we're dealing with a focus on the rational, a diminution of validity of the unseen, of the spirit world, of dreams, of imaginings, of visions. This does not figure into anything that makes any sense or has any value in contemporary society, generally speaking. There's a whole different concept of death in traditional cultures where it's not the final end all that it is in many Western traditions. There is in indigenous societies, there are people who can help new shamans along. They're supported. There is a system of initiation that's built into their culture. There's a belief in magic. There's a belief in things that are immanent in their divinity. There is the idea that there's the sacred in everything. Everything has a sentience and a meaning that we don't have in our society. In our society, it's a tree, it's a rock, it's a dog. These have different significance in a lot of indigenous and traditional societies. And there, again, there is the concept of the sacred in everything, the divine in everything that we do not have in most cases in our society. And this makes it very difficult for neo-shamans to a large extent to even give validity to what they are doing. Neo-shamans, there's always this little sliver of doubt because we have been so conditioned to the cultural paradigm that we have. So there's a little bit of a challenge there. But again, it is a matter of support and tradition. Neo-shamans are pretty much on their own, unless they are a part of a pagan group or a Wiccan group or some other group that does support their beliefs. But I think there are many neo-shamanic practitioners out there who don't have the benefit of that. So, what are the core concepts of the neo-shamanic worldview? Again, very different from ours in our normal society. Mystical orientation, it's all exciting. Everything is alive. There's an interface between the seen and the unseen. Animism, everything has ascension. Sometimes it doesn't, and you have to be able to be grounded enough to recognize that. But you're on the lookout for synchronicities. You're on the lookout for that connection. Perceiving, again, the immanent divinity, the sacred in all things, the existence of nature spirits, animals, plant spirits, and the ability of these things to intercede on behalf of humans. Belief in the efficacy of spiritual healing, that bizarre and powerful combination, synergistic combination of empathy, belief, and hypnosis, that it actually works. And if this is even evidenced in faith healings and Pentecostal healings that we see or hear of periodically. Tacit acceptance of interdimensionality. There is only so much that we can see with our physical senses, but there's a vast difference beyond that. And Jung was very tuned into the idea of interdimensionality, and he had a very difficult time trying to integrate that with the protocols of psychiatric practice during his lifetime. The validity of the shamanic journey. Most people in our society would say, yeah, you're just making it up. Acceptance in the veracity of anomalous phenomenon, and belief in death as a doorway to another dimension. This is all part of the daily life of a neo-shamanic practitioner, and the longer you go in it, the more pronounced it is. So it's like breathing. Things just don't freak you out anymore. So where did some of these ideas come from that I've just put forth? Well, much of this information comes from a 2017 study I did with some local neo-shamanic practitioners. And these are interesting people because none of them were pagan or Wiccan, and they had had nothing in their backgrounds that would really make shamanism a predictable path for them. But they were wonderful. There were 6 of them, 6 women aged 21 to 64. Of those, 3 of them were raised Roman Catholic, 2 were raised Southern Baptist, and 1 didn't really have any kind of specific religious training as a child growing up. We used a series of instruments. Always interesting in a qualitative study is how do we at least make some of the information quantifiable to give it some veracity in the minds of those who are addicted to tables and that sort of thing. So we used an instrument that was the baseline to get the baseline of people, their lenses, their personal experience, their worldviews, taking in their lenses, as I said, biology, personal experience, genetics, ethnicity, cultural beliefs, family traditions, things that they have lived through that we all live through, like major historical events and that sort of thing. And their spiritual orientation, which was really helpful to have that. And it was helpful to them to be able to define their lenses. There was another questionnaire on mysticism, another on magic, another on anomalous experiences, which was really fascinating because of the 6 people, 4 of them came right out and said they had sightings of UFOs, one of them in the parking lot at the Walmart in the town she lived in. And finally, neo-shamanic practice, how they use their practice, what their concept of the ethics and the viable ethical use of shamanic practice was. And finally, a questionnaire discussing the benefits that they found, how their lives had improved or not since they began their neo-shamanic practice. So what are the benefits of neo-shamanism as an alternative life world? Well, there are a lot of them. What came across very clearly was that there was an enhanced identity and an improved design, meaning that they felt better about themselves and interfaced with the world and things outside of their egos far more comfortably and with a lot more confidence, because there's always a stigma that anything that goes too far outside of what the society says is normal, there's something wrong with you. And realizing that, no, there isn't anything wrong with me. I can just do things and perceive things differently. All of these people were grounded, and most successful neo-shamanic practitioners are grounded. It's like, well, can you exorcise this demon that's possessing me? It's like, well, let me see. I have to do the laundry too, so let me work this out. So there's just a real balance in there, which indicates a certain strength of character and alignment between mind, body, and spirit, and a sense of well-being because of that alignment. Improved authenticity and self-acceptance. There's nothing wrong with me. I can just do this. I'm just different. I believe differently. I see differently, but I am functional. Integration of the rational and irrational functions. Enhanced connection with nature. Shamanism traditionally and in neo-shamanism is a very nature-centered practice. And there's a real reverence for nature and a real ability to interact and an acceptance of what nature can teach us. Increased awareness and acceptance of interdimensionality and anomalous phenomena. It becomes not abnormal. It's just part of the day. It's something that probably if they spoke to a psychiatrist, they would be placed on the schizophrenia spectrum and given antipsychotic medications. But this is part of humanity. It's part of our history. And that gene is still in our genome for a reason, as some evolutionary psychologists have researched and pointed out. And finally, expanded worldview. The world becomes less limited. You have this dimension and there are other dimensions, and they're all interconnected. They all are woven together, which instead of just looking at one strand of thread, you're looking at an entire tapestry. And that gives someone a real sense of perspective that if we're just focused on the here and now and what's materially in front of us, we don't have. So it's pretty amazing. So what can we conclude from these findings? Well, first of all, that neo-shamanic practice constitutes an alternative contemporary worldview and spirituality that's quite viable and is probably more practiced than we know, because most of these people just do not have churches, they don't have signs. There are some drumming groups, that sort of thing, but mostly people are kind of out on their own. But it is very significant in that with neo-shamanic practice, there comes the worldview that is animistic, interdimensional, and multiphasic, and a spirituality that goes along with it, which is very comfortable to the people who are practitioners. That the journey acts as a gateway to interdimensionality and personal interaction with what William James called the numinous. Michael Harner always said that it was going through a membrane, and I think that has been fairly consensual in my experience, my personal experience, and the reports of people that I have worked with. The altered state of the journey facilitates assistance to others through protocols of healing, acquiring protection, accessing guidance, and soliciting assistance. So the actual act of embarking on a shamanic journey from the waking state with a prescribed protocol, with rationality and agency, with a defined purpose and focus at will, is something that is common between traditional shamans and neo-shamans. The neo-shamanic life world is frequently dissonant with contemporary Western cultural beliefs. That's just it. There's a difference, and it is what it is. It does set practitioners apart. But again, there has to be that grounding. There has to be that ability to function and interact with people who don't have these beliefs and just go on with your life. We're all human, after all. The neo-shamanic practitioner's experience is one that includes that expanded worldview, which is just so, I guess I hate to use the word healing, but it is, because it takes the ego away from its point of reverence. It kind of puts things into a different perspective. The personalized relationship with the numinous, the ability to know that if someone says they need help, you know where to go, how the phenomena, the entities, teachers, animal spirits that you can access that can give you guidance and show you how to help those people, but also to interact on their behalf at your request. A prescribed means of interaction with the world of spirit to heal, seek guidance and protection for those seeking experience. You know what to do. You can go into the journey state with a specific intent of what can I do to heal somebody who who is having a serious case of the flu, for example. Also, the expansion of personal consciousness into the interdimensional and transpersonal realms, which results in the adoption of a worldview that is, interestingly enough, consistent with Gnostic traditions. And there is evidence that there was around biblical times and post-biblical times an influence from Mongolian shamans that came to the Middle East and interacted not only with early Christians, but also some Jewish, Hebrew rabbis. Fascinating stuff. So you're really into esoterica at this point, but it's not without precedent. And I think that in and of itself is really, really fascinating. So again, in conclusion, this is a whole different worldview that people can adopt, and that gives them a very interconnected and aligned spirituality, psychology, and physical being. So I hope that this has been helpful rather than confusing. I know I had to really speed through a lot of material very, very quickly. But hopefully you will have questions and answers. And I hope that by the time you see this, that the tables will be up and charts will be up on the website for the Institute of Esoteric Psychology, which you see right here on your screen. Hopefully those will be up there if the technical gods are willing. So that being said, I want to thank you all very much. I apologize again for having to cram so much into a small space, but we do what we can. I hope you enjoy it, and I hope before you ask any questions that you take a stretch, because it's really hard sitting in front of the computer for a long period of time, and I know y'all have been doing that. So thank you again, and I will talk to you soon. Thanks.